This video is made possible by our sponsors, AJA. We'd like to thank AJA for all their support and tell you to go to aja.com for all your production and post-production needs. Hi, I'm Gordon Burkell from Filmmaker U. At Filmmaker U, we create courses for film professionals to deepen and diversify your existing skill set. You can learn more at filmmakeru.com or, of course, follow us on Twitter at filmmaker_u. Every week, we interview a film professional to discuss their work, and this week I'm joined by Maria Livingstone, who's a costume designer whose work includes Siren, Unspeakable, and more recently Champions, starring Woody Harrelson and Kate Olsen. Welcome to the show, Maria.
Thank you for having me.
I guess my first question is for you is, how did you sort of discover your path to costume design, and how did you become involved in it?
Well, I went to school for fashion and then decided that I didn't love fashion. And I ended up meeting someone who worked in costumes and film. And he's like, you should come work in film. So I went and volunteered on a low budget and I was hooked.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What was the low? Because usually when I hear low budget stories, it's usually like nightmares.
Oh my gosh, it was called for a few lousy dollars, the local one. And then the one that I did right after that was Bruce McDonald's. I can't remember the name of it, but it was quite famous.
Oh, Hardcore Logo?
Hardcore Logo, yes.
There you go.
Yeah.
So when working on something like Hardcore Logo, because what's interesting is his vision of like punks is very 80s, but like at that time punks were I guess leaning more towards the skater style. So when you're looking at that stuff, how do you break that, how do you figure out where to go, and do you bring stuff from the modern punk and put it in, or how do you approach
I think we did a ton of vintage and it was super low budget, so I think it was a lot of actors' wardrobe and just a good mix of everything. I don't think that one was really genre specific necessarily, but I mean, I always thought that that's how films were going to be made from here on in, and I realize now that that was like a one of.
Was that because he's very open to ideas and stuff, or?
Yeah, and there weren't any rules back then, right?
Yeah.
So we did some crazy stuff, and then it also went on the road as well, right? So yeah.
I have to ask, did he bring references to you? Was he bringing in Forgotten Rebels and all those Toronto punk bands, or?
You know what? I wasn't the designer on that. I was a lonely assistant, so I don't remember. I don't remember the design process, but the costume designer Joe, I mean, she was brilliant. We're still friends to this day. So I don't know what the process was. I just did what I was told.
I think what attracted me to color correction was the fact that we were the next stage of cinematography. And the creative side was huge, trying to understand what was wrong with an image, how to balance it, trying to understand how to let the tools do what you want them to do. Where else can the technology go? What else can we do? I'm very interested in trying to mold the image and create the best look possible. And whatever tools are out there, you want to try and latch onto them. I'm Eric Whipp, and this is my course on color correction.
Well, you've worked in theater as well as film. So what are some of the challenges from theater that people working in film might not be aware of when it comes to costume design?
I think in film we deal with a lot of multiples, right? So I think that's probably the biggest aspect, and how it shows up on camera and how it shows up on the stage is completely different.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Do you find because I remember going to the Shaw Festival and going to see the costume department. And they, for the production that we were seeing, it was all World War II uniforms. So they had real uniforms. Do you find that in television and film, you guys are lent real, or you have to make from scratch usually?
Well, when you're getting that old now, we do have to make from scratch, or there are replica companies that make them. But when you're going back to the 50s or the 20s now, all those costumes are falling apart, so we have to rebuild ourselves. Plus, that goes back to multiples of things, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, as they say, one is none.
Yeah. Now, so how, when you're looking at the script, what do you look for in terms of the characters to sort of bring them to life on screen?
What do I look for?
Character development and what inspires you, and
Well, I read it multiple times before and I imagine every time I'm reading it what that character is going to look like. And then maybe about the third time I have a clear vision, and I'm usually right. Once I talk to the director and the production designer, it's usually your first instinct is correct, what they should be.
So when you were working on something like Champions, like, did you prep stuff and bring it in for Bobby to see and sort of go with that, or did you work with him a bit to figure it out?
Well, that one was a little more different than how we usually do it. I did my mood boards for what I thought the characters would look like before they had even been cast. And then once they were cast, in order to make our actors feel super comfortable in front of the camera, we wanted them to still have their own elements in their characters. So what I ended up doing was coming up with a questionnaire. It was maybe, I don't know, like 2 pages long of like favorite colors, favorite animals, favorite sports team, favorite movies, like do you play an instrument, all of those things. And then incorporated their answers to that to what their character looked like.
And what was Kate Olsen's favorite animal?
Yeah, man, I should have sent her the questionnaire.
Yeah.
She did not get it. Just our friends did. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What would you say is your research process for films when you're starting?
I guess, I'm very much a realist when it comes to my characters. I like to make them as close to the real world as possible. So I dive deep on, like for Woody, like basketball coaches. I went deep on that with him and Ernie. And then, colors, textures. I think everyone uses Pinterest, but I think, my favorite is probably like Getty Images and Tumblr, things like that.
Bob Farrelly is like, he's done some pretty iconic comedies, and his comedies can be really crazy and out there. And so what were some of the, what was your working relationship with him? What was your discussions to sort of get in his head of what he was looking for?
Bobby just let me run with it all on my own. He's like, I hired you to do the job and I know that you can do it well. So you bring me your ideas and I'll let you know if I dislike them or have any changes. So he was super supportive in everything that I brought to him. There was a fine line of comedy and not making fun of our characters as well. So that was, I don't want to say that was a challenge, but it was definitely something I was thinking about.
What would you say were some of the one of the more challenging things in Champions?
It goes to production. We shot so many scenes per day, and if you've got your 10 friends in it plus your other cast, we're looking at 15 cast members per scene times 10 is over 100 changes per day. So I think that was probably the biggest challenge.
Now, you worked a lot with the production designer, if I'm not mistaken. What was that working process like?
He brought a lot to the table, and he had his own ideas as well of, like, for instance, what Caitlin's character would be like, because he had already designed her Winnebago. I don't know if you saw that, the Shakespeare van. So I just riffed off of what he had created because I loved it so much. I'm like, that's so perfect.
How did you go about for the 10 friends? How did you go about creating the different unique styles for them? Like you talked about the questionnaires.
Well, I guess Showtime, for instance, in his questionnaire, he really loved old music and bowling. So I immediately thought of Kramer from Seinfeld, and then kind of modeled him off of Kramer. So he's in the bowling shirts and he's just in the old man outfits all the time. When you see him standing outside the bus, he's got, the fedora hat and the long coat and the scarf. And then he's got, cardigan sweaters on with his shorts when he's playing basketball. So that kind of thing. And then Matthew is colorblind in real life. So I ended up putting him in super bright costumes. So I don't think I would have made that choice if I didn't know that.
I think about colorblind people, and more of them tend to be more like the ones I've worked with tend to be like the colors are mixed up or more muted when they're dressing because they're nervous about that. Yeah, it sounds interesting.
Matthew was game. He was so excited when he walked into that fitting room and saw it all. I'm like, these are really bright colors. Matthew was like, oh my God, Maria, I love it. So it made him happy as long as they were happy and felt comfortable.
So I have one last question for you. What would you say is your favorite guilty pleasure film to watch?
I was going to say TV show.
Oh, you can do a TV show too.
Yeah, you know what? I'm a sucker for The Good Doctor.
That's a good one.
It's so mainstream, but it's so sweet. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for letting me interview today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
And that's it for this week, everyone. Make sure to check us out at filmmakeru.com. I'm Gordon Merkel. Thanks for watching. This video is made possible by our sponsors, AJA. We'd like to thank AJA for all their support and tell you to go to aja.com for all your production and post-production needs.